I actually need this mic if I can. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to walk around because we've been sitting all day. And all the, can you make it louder, please? Yeah, it's on. Okay. It's always good. Oh, turn it on is a good idea. Turning it on is a good idea. The reason I need to walk around is really because I need to use some slides and the computer is here. And it's really always both a pleasure and rather difficult to follow Todd, which I had the pleasure of doing recently at another conference. So I'm not going to be as passionate as him. But let me just say the following. I do not study radicalization. I don't want to study radicalization. And I wish less people would study radicalization. Because for that to happen, radicalization would have to reduce. I really don't like the term, and I appreciate your comments because I think they're right on. But I think we need to think about the question. And the point of departure from where I think about these questions is that I study Pakistan, and more importantly, I study Pakistanis, and most importantly, I study Pakistanis in America. One of my recent books was about Pakistanis in America, and if you're trying to think seriously about Pakistanis in America, if you're trying to think seriously really about yourself, which is my point of departure on this, then a lot of things have to be also considered. What I want to do here, because the time is short, is really focus in on Pakistanis in America in relation of radicalization and think about where that takes us. I want to raise 3 questions for you. I promise I will not answer any of them because then we'll have nothing to talk about. The first of those questions is, how can we understand the infrastructures of radicalization amongst Pakistanis and Americans? That's really what we're talking about. What is the infrastructure of radicalization? And that may be ideas, that may be connections, that may be the blob, that may be memories, and that may be Fox News. But what are these infrastructures that support people getting radicalized that you would otherwise not expect? The second question that I want to raise here is why or who are Pakistani Americans, where are they, and what are they doing? And I'll spend just a little time on this. This is what most of my research has been on, but I won't go too much into it. And the third question I want to raise is, how are the infrastructures of alienation critical to understanding radicalization? And I really think that's the question. I entirely agree. I get very disturbed by the cultism. I think there's a lot of truth to it, but there is also a lot of danger to it, because if we assume the problem is some tribe or some sect, or some version of Islam. I think all of those are correct. I'm not disputing that at all. But I think if we reduce the problem to that, it is like swatting flies inside of a fly's hive. Because you will solve one problem and it will come up again. The question is, why does alienation happen to an extent that a normal person will take up extremist violence? That is not normal behavior. Coming on a Saturday morning to a conference like this is not normal behavior. No, I say that this is a serious point. If we were a normal community, we would not be doing this. We would be playing baseball. We would be playing soccer. The fact that we as a community of Pakistani Americans are spending our Saturday doing this is the fact that we realize there is something wrong. I mean, I greatly admire Nadia, but in some ways I worry about people like Nadia. Because our brightest people are all trying to study this question. I run a research institute, and this is important. I run a research institute, and literally a week does not go by when I get a young person of Pakistani origin emailing me or coming up and saying, I'm studying to be a doctor, I'm in medical school, but I want to move to security. I'm in engineering school, but I want to move to security. I'm doing corporate law, but I want to start figuring out tribes in Afghanistan. I say, please don't waste your time. If you were a normal community, you want engineers and entrepreneurs and doctors, rather than entire armies. I want a few very good Nadias, but I don't want a whole community of Nadias. Sorry, Nadia. But the logic point I'm making is, we as a community do realize that there's something wrong. And that is the issue of alienation. that I want to talk to. I'll talk about 3 questions, different order because the story makes more sense, but let me go quickly. So this is from the book that I did on Pakistanis in America a few years ago, Portrait of a Giving Community, published by Harvard University Press. And what we found, there are 4 key characteristics of this community. This was a very numerical book, so it was full of data. And so we looked at the numbers, we looked at the distribution, where are they, what are they doing, where did they come here, and so on and so forth. We were really interested in philanthropy, not the security nonsense. And we found that there are 4 characteristics, and this is important because these characteristics make Pakistanis in America very different. A, from Pakistanis in Pakistan, B, from Pakistanis elsewhere, including Britain, and therefore all those sort of links that people want to make. The sources of radicalization here are very different. First, it's a very affluent community. The average Pakistani American is by definition more affluent than the average American. Now you can look at the census data, you can look at anything. There's a very simple reason. This is not because they are particularly smart. I'm sorry to break your bubble. It's because the visa policies are such that if you can't really make a living, you're really not allowed. You're also not allowed if you can make a living, but that's a separate story. So A, it's an affluent community. B, it's a highly professional community. It's a community of people who all grew up to be doctors and engineers. So even those like me who now teach political science have a first degree in engineering, because that's the only thing our parents would allow us to be. And no, I'm not joking. Go to New York, sit in a cab, 1 out of 3 times it's going to be a Pakistani driver. How do you know it's a Pakistani driver? Listen to the radio. He has NPR on. Try it out. Try it out. He's got NPR on. Ask him where he went to school and he'll tell you where he went to university. Right? So the point is, again, for visa policies, this is simply an artifact of the visa policies of, you can't take a boat from Pakistan to New York. You can do it from Haiti. But because of that, visa pulls have created a particular community. So it's professional, it's affluent, it is a highly organized community. In our book, we looked at Pakistani organizations. Just like this event, how many organizers do you have? 3, 4, 5? Every city that has 10 Pakistanis has 15 organizations. So a lot of time is spent in organizing. I was in Chicago, true story. We were doing our book, true story. I was in Chicago, we were on an elevator going up, and I had been very impressed by all these organizations, and I asked my host, how many Pakistani organizations in Chicago? And he thinks, and he says, I think there are about 18. And I said, wow, 18 Pakistani organizations in Chicago? People must have very many active people. He says, no, the active people are 12. But they just keep making these organizations. Why does this matter? This matters because there is a counter blob there. You have the impossibility of the infrastructure of the counter blob, because you have these organizational infrastructures to talk to and have talked to other people. And finally, it is a very dispersed community, and I'll come to this. This is very different from Europe. It is very different from Middle East. It's not a neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood community. And you'll see this in just a minute. But what I'm trying to point out here is, the type of linkages we make, well, this happened in the British community, therefore this will happen here, I think are immensely skewed because we are not understanding the nature of the community. Let me point out the dispersed thing in just a minute. But before that, and I won't go into this, but this is actually the fun part in the book, we looked at the evolution of Pakistanis coming to Pakistan. My favorite are Pakistanis who came to the US before there was a Pakistan. The pre-Pakistan phase, which is really, really interesting. Did you ever realize the Hawaiian shirt, the Hawaiian shirt we wear, was brought to the US by 2 Hyderabadi brothers? I'm not joking at all. The Hollywood star of Pakistani origin, who fought in the Second World War and was starred in 35 Hollywood movies. Pakistani immigrant number 3, Sabu Dastagir. But anyhow, they have come at 4 phases. The spike you see up there is a spike for all immigrant communities. It's a spike of amnesty when a lot of illegal became legal. But you essentially see this, it's gone back up after 9/11. But you see these 5 distinct phases, and they're all defined by visa policy. The reason I'm saying this is that we have actually a fairly good idea of what this community is. The dispersedness is really, really important, because if you start looking at where they are, and there aren't obviously census numbers, but we put this together for 2002, and what you find is they're mostly on the East Coast. The largest concentration obviously is around New York. Technically, according to our estimates, it's more in New Jersey, but they're really New York centric. They're really New York centric. But they're everywhere. As far as we can tell, there are 13 of us in Alaska. I don't know what they're doing there, but we are everywhere.